If we can just have everyone sit down and we'll get ready to kick off in about 2 minutes.
Friends and I'm chasing sleep. Everybody's worried about me. In too deep. Say I'm in too deep. And it's been 2 years. I miss my home. But there's a fire burning in my bones. Still believe. Yeah, I still believe. And all those things I didn't say. Wrecking balls inside my brain. I will scream. I'm loud tonight. Can you hear?
Welcome, everybody, to the Women's Horse Racing second annual summit. I'm Zoe Cadman. I will be speeding along the events through the day. Just delighted to be here. I'm going to very quickly introduce our panel, led, of course, by On the End, our own Millie Bowl, works here at Santa Anita. You might have seen her on the pony in the morning. Her other half, the lower half of the totem pole, Tim Yakteen, is the trainer here. So Millie will be moderating that panel. We will, of course, get to hear from Shannon Arvin from Keeneland. She is the CEO there, the first CEO to run Keeneland, and she's had a blockbuster Keeneland September sale. I think she's back there counting her $400 million that they turned over during the sale. So we'll get to hear from her. On the end, we have Dr. Casille, Batten, DVM for First Racing. She can answer all of your veterinary questions. And to her left, we have the one and only Britney Eurton, NBC, FanDuel Sports. You may have seen her. And then next to her is Lisa Lazarus. Probably needs no introduction here. CEO of HISA. I'm sure people will have plenty of questions. And then, of course, we have Joy Garner. Ladies, behave, because she could take you to court. Joy Garner is the EVP and General Counsel for NYRA. The time is about to start, ladies. You have 60 minutes, and we do have another 15 minutes after for a Q&A. Good luck.
Thank you very much.
It feels like a game show.
Well, my husband told me I'm not supposed to wear white after Labor Day, but thankfully they put a black chair behind me so I don't blend in. And I see some other women, barrier-breaking women out here wearing white, so congratulations. Wanted to thank firstly our MC, Zoe Cadman. Can we have a round of applause for Zoe? Great job she's doing today. Also wanted to thank each and every one of you for coming. Without you coming, we wouldn't have been able to have this event. It's very encouraging to see this many women in the room, and I see a few brave men up there that probably came for the goodie bags, but thank you all very much. So give yourselves a round of applause. Thank you, ladies. And finally to Stephanie Horonis and her amazing team of women who've worked really hard to put this beautiful event on. So to Stephanie and her team, thank you. Woo! Well, today's topic of discussion is the state of the industry, and we have gone really from a business as usual to, and I'll coin a phrase from Lisa Lazarus, all hands on deck. What are we going to do to correct and protect this sport that we love so much? All right, we've got to improve public perception. We have to improve and invigorate interest, and most importantly, we have to keep our horses safe. So that's what we're going to be talking about this morning. I've got the all-star team here, right? You know when you're like starstruck? I'm power-struck with these girls right here. This is going to be fun. Do want to start, though, by saying that Shannon Arvin, who unfortunately couldn't be here in person, had a very strong message to send to you all she wanted to share with you, and I think you'll find it very poignant for today's topic of discussion, the state of the industry. So let's first hear from Shannon Arvin, CEO and President of Keeneland.
Hello, my name is Shannon Arvin, President and CEO of Keeneland Association. As you can imagine, coming from my 18 years as a lawyer over to Keeneland now as a racetrack executive, I've spent a lot of time thinking about sports. Why do sports matter? Why are they important? When we were in the middle of a pandemic, why did we miss sports so very much? In light of the many serious issues that we face today, are sports important? I've come to the conclusion that yes, sports are very important. Nelson Mandela gave one of my favorite quotes about sports. Sport has the power to change the world. It has the power to inspire. It has the power to unite people in a way little else does. It speaks to youth in a language they understand. Sport can create hope where there was once despair. Horse racing is actually one of the oldest sports in the world, dating back to 3000 BC. All of us who have worked in this great sport of racing know that it's possible to experience the highest of highs and the lowest of lows, sometimes all in a single day. As horse people, we accept that. We feel honored and privileged to work with the horses and around the horses each and every day. As an industry, these past few years have definitely tested our mettle. We've navigated unprecedented challenges on several fronts. Safety, changing legislative and regulatory environment, all under expanded media attention, and at times in the midst of a worldwide pandemic. Keeneland's founders in 1936 set about to create a model racetrack to perpetuate and improve our sport. That is our North Star. Each and every day, we work to be a model racetrack, always with a focus to improve our sport and the lives of those who live and work in it. While our founders undoubtedly faced challenges, such as acting on the heels of the Great Depression and at the advent of World War II, at least they didn't have to deal with social media, which gives an unearned voice to anyone with a cell phone. Some days it feels daunting, and admittedly, we all have times that we feel anxious about the future of racing. But I believe these challenges represent opportunities for racing. We just have to be smart and creative and work together to take advantage of the opportunities. If anything, these past few years have confirmed just how resilient horse people are. We believe blue skies are on the horizon. We innately have a sense of optimism. Among the things that make me optimistic about the future of racing are the unprecedented coming together of people in our industry to make the reforms necessary to improve our sport. HISA, under the leadership of Lisa Lazarus, has created uniform rules and uniform standards for adjudication of those rules, so there is at last a level playing field for all participants in our sport. The enthusiasm of buyers at our sales, especially new investors who are eager to become part of the racing community. The growth of purses across the United States racetracks. United efforts to unequivocally place the safety of our equine and human athletes first. The increasing use of technology, including technology that horses wear so that we can identify horses of interest and prevent catastrophic injuries. The increasing use of veterinary diagnostic tools such as PET scans and MRIs, so once a horse is identified as a horse of interest, veterinarians are able to help the horse and again prevent catastrophic injuries. The addition of veterinarians to our teams at racetracks to ensure racing is as safe as it can possibly be. The increasing and more sophisticated use of data to better understand and prevent injuries on the racetrack. Horse racing is now working with companies like Amazon and Palantir, the best of the minds in the business, to try and analyze that data. The study of track surfaces to ensure consistent maintenance standards and identify the safest surfaces for our horses to train and compete. Opportunities to enhance patrons' experiences at racetracks. Tracks like Belmont are rebuilding with a focus on locations appealing to families, horsemen, and fans. Be on the lookout for some exciting news from Keeneland as well about some projects we hope to undertake in the near future, also to enhance the experience for our fans at the racetrack. We firmly believe that if we get people close to the horse, the rest will take care of itself. At my core, this is what I believe about our sport of racing. I believe in the beauty and the strength of the horse. I believe in our team, the depth, passion, and commitment of every single person on our team to what is best for the horse, in the future of our sport, and in each other. We as racing fans and participants are uniquely positioned to share the amazing aspects of our sport with others and to continue to take excellent care of our horses. As we know, a horse is measured in hands, our hands, the hands that show care, are resilient and strong, the hands that are responsible for the success and the future of this industry, then, now, and for generations to come.
At Keeneland, a horse will always be measured in hands. Hands that see, that sense, that speak. Hands that hold our sport to a higher standard, not for our sake, but for theirs, for the love of the horse, for generations to come.
Well, a very positive and powerful, I think, message there from Shannon. And I do want to just mention that I want this to be very much an interactive conversation. So we'll be hearing from our panelists. If you have any questions, jot them down. And at the end, we'll have about 15 minutes for a Q&A. And then before we go to lunch, we've got a very important presentation. It's the Jane Goldstein Exemplary Leadership Award, and it's going to the one and only Chelsea Canty. So please stay seated. Let's give Chelsea a round of applause. I'm so excited for Chelsea. So after that, then we will excuse you for lunch. Lisa, I was watching the message from Shannon there, big smiles on your face. The two words that really hit me were optimism, I think, and opportunity. I feel like you're agreeing with that from your perspective, from the CEO of HISA. Are you feeling the same?
Yes, I very much am. And before I kind of talk for a couple minutes about what I think about the industry, I just want to say two things. One is Shannon is so phenomenal, and she is such a trailblazer, and we're just really lucky to have her as a woman leader in the industry. And I really thought that was a sort of very powerful speech. The other thing I want to say is how fantastic was Reagan, and I wanted to just mention that she talked a lot about what we as women can kind of do to sort of up our game in the industry or in the workplace. But I think it's also important for women who actually manage other women to also take those lessons forward, because we need to be kind of propping each other up and empowering each other. And I really listen carefully because I'm fortunate to have a lot of women on my team. More than half my senior leadership team is made of women. And I'm going to sort of use some of the things that she brought to our attention to make sure that I'm giving them the best chance of being successful. So putting that aside, when it comes to the industry, what I think right now is we're definitely at an inflection point. There's no question. It's been a really challenging year for horse racing from an equine injury standpoint. That's no stranger to a lot of you here that would have gone through the events in 2019 at this racetrack. These are challenges that are really unique given the current environment that we live in, and they are ones that we obviously have to take seriously and respond to. And I think Shannon laid out a lot of the things that we're doing in the industry. But I think the positive is that there's a genuine recognition amongst all stakeholder groups that this is the time where we have to all put our heads together and do what we can to really prop up the industry, show what we do for the horse, do better for the horse, and work together. I think those that are not working sort of with us are really compromising the opportunities for the sport to move forward and be successful. And I think there's so much reason to, funny enough, we're talking about Keeneland. I mean, you look at the difficult year that we had in racing, and yet the sales are still phenomenally successful. What that says to me is, when you buy a weanling, you buy a yearling, you're kind of buying a dream for the future. And if there's still, I think, hope and belief that we're going to have a successful future, then I think, we all owe it to each other to come together and make sure that that happens.
Joy, I was watching your, reaction there. Do you feel the same? You're a New York operator, of course, of the racetracks there. Are you feeling that the East Coast is feeling this positivity?
I think we definitely feel the positivity. We definitely feel the optimism. I was reading a recent study, and it talked about the group that we're losing, opinion elites, they call them. And they said we'd lost, since 2021, we'd lost probably like 20 basis points of their favor. And more than that, it said that as we lose this group, as any business loses this group, you fall over the edge, and it happens very, very quickly. One of the positive notes that came from this is that in the study, and they were talking to this group, in the focus group, and they said, well, all we ever hear about are horse deaths or nothing at all. And I'm sitting on a panel with 4 women in a room full of women that we could probably talk about the beautiful things about our sport for a while without going to horse deaths. So there's a big opportunity to actually educate and bring those people back into loving our sport and bringing the support back. And I think that us being on this precipice, everybody working together to do that is something that could, it's what gives me optimism.
Britney, you probably feel quite responsible because you're the one that's out there trying to portray how beautiful and wonderful this sport is. From your perspective, being out there and covering these events live, how do you feel about the state of the industry?
Well, I think covering it has been a real challenge, obviously, because I work for 2 different entities, and we approach things. You have to approach things from a different standpoint, and it is difficult to be within a sport that you love, but also have to cover it from such an objective standpoint as well. You are required to cover the good with the bad, and that's incredibly difficult. I'll be completely transparent, and I'll say that there are some days I don't want to go to work because you feel very down. You feel very devastated, obviously, about what's transpiring, but what you all are talking about is there is a sense of optimism, and I see that when I bring my friends who have nothing to do with racing out to the racetrack, and how much fun that they have, how much they enjoy it, how much afterwards they say to me, we want to come back. But what I do feel, and one of our biggest challenges that we face, is the PR problem. We speak to our bubble. And yes, we all know in this room, everybody on this panel knows how well these horses are treated, the progress that is being made in terms of safety, the good that is this sport. That made me very emotional watching that. But outside of our bubble, we're not hitting them. And if we had the answer as to how to speak to everybody outside of our bubble, I think we would already be doing it. These are complex problems, and it's not going to be figured out on this panel today, but if we can talk about, or at least get the conversation going in the right direction to make changes in the right direction, I think that'll help. But just from my perspective, covering it from a media standpoint, it is difficult. But when you have those stories, those beautiful stories, the reason I love my job, that's what we're here for, and that's what we need to push and carry on to. Cody's Wish, how many people loved that story?
Amazing.
Things like that. And they don't always come around often, but all of the hands of the people that touch these horses, they all have a story.
Yeah. And Casille, you're, I would say, in the trenches, if you like, because you're out there every morning. You're with the horse trainers. You're watching these horses train. How are you feeling? Britney used that word, and I thought it was really good to describe that we need change. You're seeing change, you're making change, right? How are the horsemen responding to that change?
I think we're lucky in California that we have been implementing a lot of these rules for a few years, so we're actually seeing down the road how things are going to go. And of course, at the beginning, it was met with some fear, some suspicion, but I think what's really happened is veterinarians are now taking a more active role in horse welfare on the racetrack instead of a more reactive role. So someone calling and saying, this horse is injured, come look at it. Now we're looking at these horses daily, and you actually get to know them, you get to know what they look like, we're catching things sooner. So I think over time, the trainers have noticed that too, and it's become a more integrative relationship where we're all working together versus us having to police trainers. And so I think it's a really positive change.
Shannon mentioned in her message that some of the technologies, new technologies that are coming around that, even equipment that horses might be wearing. Can you explain that a little bit better?
Yeah, so there's a few things in the pipeline. Obviously, we've been implementing the PET scanners in multiple racetracks, and it's becoming more popular, and that's been wonderful in catching injuries much earlier than any other technology. So we've been able to prevent a lot of injuries that way. And then there's a lot of wearable technologies now that's still in the works, but basically measuring the horse's stride length or any asymmetry while they're training. So maybe we can start picking up things sooner, because the more technology we have and the more we reduce injuries, the harder it gets, because you need to just keep digging and digging to find what we can do next.
Well, I can tell the sense of all 4 women here, just their passion for horse racing. Joy, this is a great story, I think. I heard Joy say this. She went to NYRA, she was in the department, she came back and ran the department. Why, Joy?
When I choose any position, honestly, I choose a management team. I choose who I want to work with, who I want to work for. When I was coming back and I was leaving my last position, I talked to Dave, and he was very much willing to push the envelope. Let's see what we can do. I want to do what's right. I want to do it fair, and then let's be innovative. Let's grow the business. That's an exciting opportunity for me. I wanted to be amongst the group that changed NYRA, that rebuilt Belmont Park. It's a great place to be. I don't think there's a better place to spend your summer than Saratoga Racecourse. I mean,
Those from Southern California might say dumb.
Yeah, you see?
We've got the rivalry going.
and here's the battle.
And it's East versus West, and then every other part of the year, right here.
But there is always that sense of slight division, right, between the East Coast and West Coast, whether it's, who has the better handicap horse on the East Coast or the West Coast. But how do we, Joy, do you feel the division back there?
So quite honestly, I don't. I don't feel a division. I feel like when we need to, when I need to talk to the other tracks, I'm able to call, get advice. What are you guys doing? What are we? I think that we have a pretty good relationship business relationship across the tracks. I don't really feel a divide. I think this is friendly banter.
Friendly banter.
It's definitely friendly banter. But we all simulcast each other's races. We all take bets from each other. It's one of those things that anybody doing well helps the whole group.
And Lisa, you took on a massive undertaking when you decided to be CEO for HISA. What inspired you to take that role on?
It was an opportunity to do something that was really going to be personally impactful for me, and to use some of the skills I built over the years to really change the direction, I think, of an industry. I came from, many people don't know, I came from the horse sport world internationally, and I was the general counsel of the International Equestrian Federation, the FEI. And when I started with them was sort of back in 2009. They had come off a really bad Beijing Olympic Games. There had been a number of horse positive tests, and they were facing essentially being kicked out of the Olympic program because of it. Because of welfare and integrity issues. And so we brought in a very similar system to we now have on the ADMC side with HISA, and it was like 133 countries, and there was a lot of pushback. And so I thought, if I can handle 133 countries, different languages, different customs, I can easily handle one country with multiple states. I probably underestimated what that was going to be like. I can say it was sort of eyes wide open. But it really, it has been, it's a challenge. It certainly has its obstacles and its difficult moments, but I really do feel like we're making progress. And I think one example I want to share is there's so much focus, of course, on these sort of big moments, like the Derby, like what happened, obviously, at Saratoga, to some extent, Laurel. And so those are the moments that are in the front of the public eye. When we sort of launched our racetrack safety program, we focused our efforts on the Ohios, the New Mexicos, the Arizonas, where really they weren't even doing pre-race exams, where there was a lot of opportunity to make a difference. And I feel like we've made a really tangible difference there. And if you look at those numbers are dramatically down. Unfortunately, they don't get the coverage that the big moments do. But I do know that we are making progress, and we're obviously going to kind of face these new challenges head on.
Britney, you come from a very different perspective in that you were born into the sport as opposed to coming up through the corporate world. Was it the horses that took you to broadcasting, or broadcasting brought you back to the horses?
It's too funny. If you ask my dad, he did not push me to work in racing whatsoever. So I think the fact that I'm sitting here with all of you today and have had the career that I've had thus far would probably have surprised him. I like to think that they're proud. It's so funny being on the other side of the mic. I'm just going to put that out there right now. Usually I can kind of control the conversation. I know what I'm going to ask. So this is definitely, I'll admit it, nerve-wracking moment for me. It's funny. I said, when I moderated the panel, I had everyone raise their hand who has felt imposter syndrome before. Oh yeah, right now, 100%. What am I doing on this panel? But in terms of my direction of my career, I think I'd always wanted to do something in entertainment per se. Acting was really my passion when I was younger, and then I went through the whole process of becoming an actress, and it is, if anybody's ever tried, a real challenge. You have to get told no a lot, and I didn't love playing another character, but I was so intrigued by people's stories, and maybe that's what I love about entertainment that is translated into broadcasting. But I went through my phase of being a teenager and going to college and not really wanting to hang out with my parents, but it was the racing that brought me back. It was the horses that brought me back. Walking up and down that shed row, anybody that has done that, you get to know the personalities of each of these horses, and I fell back in love with it again. I spent all of my younger years at the track and then came back to it and just found the love again. And for me, it is, as I mentioned earlier, it's the stories. There are so many. Give me a long form interview anytime. Lisa probably doesn't love it because I've done that before with her. But it's the stories that truly make me love this sport and why I'm in it. And I just hope we can continue to share all the good ones.
Casille, you're a regulatory vet, which is actually, let's face it, something pretty new to all of us, right? You don't go to SC Davis and think, I'm going to be a regulatory vet, right? How did you decide to take that path?
Well, I definitely had imposter syndrome too, because I didn't grow up in the racing industry, and I'm sure all of you have heard, or if you didn't grow up on the backside, no one's going to take you seriously. So I started working at the sales in college, and then just kind of fell in love with the racing community. I really feel like it's such a close-knit group. It can definitely be like a soap opera sometimes, but that's fun as well. And so just these horsemen and women that know so much about their animals was just really something I wanted to be around.
You mentioned earlier the positives of the new technology that we have. What, in your sense, is the biggest positive that you have seen since HISA has come into effect?
I think just having more of a veterinary presence on the racetracks so that we are not seen as policing. We're seen more as helping and there for assistance. So the greatest joy is when a trainer comes to me and wants a second opinion or says, I'm a little worried about this, can I show it to you? Whereas previously it had really been, don't let the vets know about this, you know. So just really having more people around that can help give opinions on these horses.
Lisa, it's working.
Yeah.
Right?
No,
It's
well,
working.
I mean, obviously, Castle's here in California, which already had a tremendous consciousness around safety. But I do, one thing that's really encouraging and inspiring for me is I do hear a lot from regulatory veterinarians in jurisdictions that had less support on the safety side who say, just thank you so much for changing the focus, for giving us these tools, basically for giving us support. Because if you're a regulatory vet I won't name jurisdictions, but in a state where safety isn't that important, you are going to battle every day with nobody to back you up. So what we try to do is we try to make sure that we're giving the support to those veterinarians who are on the ground in places where frankly HISA is not that well received for because of change, et cetera. So I think it's just also just changing the conversation and changing the consciousness of what's really important in our sport.
I'm so curious, how do you change mentality? Obviously, that's a very difficult thing to do so, but have you noticed going into certain jurisdictions?
Yeah, so it's funny, I was thinking a lot during the keynote speech about some of the qualities that Reagan was talking about that women possess, and I think the thing that's been, most helpful to me is that I am just by nature, just very empathetic, and relationships are so important to me. She talked about relationships and everything, that I think really listening and actually like reacting and changing if somebody makes a compelling point. I think that's been a way to show people that we really, the truth is, you know, HISA, I have amazing people who spent their whole life in racing who work for HISA. They wake up every morning and all they care about is making a difference. And I think, you know, when people realize that we may not always get it right, we actually often, not maybe often, but frequently get it wrong, but like we care and we're trying to get it right. And I think when people realize there's a sort of refreshness about that they haven't necessarily experienced from all the racing commissions, et cetera. Like we are always available 24/7, Saturday, Sunday, we don't close. You know, we are always like there to try to support and to be available. And I think if you just sort of listen and explain and just show your eagerness to do the right thing, that changes, it doesn't change all minds, but it does change, you know, quite a few that originally were just very resistant.
Joy, you're nodding there. I see there is this sort of nurturing sense of women wanting to fix, right?
Well, yes, we want to fix, but also one of the things is I think we're a lot more able to mold to different scenarios that sometimes men can be a bit harder, right? We're more likely to adapt. And so when you're coming across a scenario where someone is pushing, being empathetic and being adaptable helps them see that, listen, I can phrase this sentence 13 different ways. We're going to end up making sure this horse is safe. We're going to end up making sure this race is safe.
You said something very interesting once about Payne Brown and working with him and at Think 450, that he had this no strategy, and that you would have an idea, and you take it back, nope, you come back again, right? Do we need more of that in this racing industry?
The strategy was this: I tell him no 3 times so he could go back and fix it. I still put that in place. It's smart people really definitely need people to challenge them. You can't sit around with people who always say yes. People get things wrong. I get things wrong, and I need someone to say no. Let me go back. I'll tinker it. Come back and try to convince you. By the time you get to the third no, it's probably a really good idea, especially when you're dealing with a smart person. And now some not as smart, you might need 7 or 8 no's, but a smart person is going to keep coming back and keep pushing you and keep saying, all right, why don't you like this? But this is the best way, and that is the no strategy. Most people can get it at 3. You got the genius idea.
It's like constantly evolving the idea and
Yes.
fine-tuning it each way. So you're not saying no to the idea, but just like keep coming back.
Yeah.
Keep coming
fine-tuning
back.
Perfecting
Just
it.
Yeah.
keep coming back.
Right. Brittany, I wanted to ask you, because you're out there sometimes in an event, and you spoke about it. Sometimes things just don't go right? The unexpected that happens. How do you deal with that? And do we deal with it the right way?
In terms of the tougher parts of
Yes.
the sport, in this industry, and we talk about it a lot when we're covering a race, right? We'll have the format that's set there. And you know that the format will go out the window as soon as something happens, good or bad, right? Because you have to follow wherever it takes you. Unlike other sports that maybe are a little bit more exact, our sport is not one of those. So you have to be willing to adjust on the fly. But in terms of when something happens, say something happens on the track, and it is something that you have to cover and share the information with the public because that's what they want, what they need. A lot of the time, say if I'm working for NBC, you have a completely different audience that knows nothing about horse racing, and so they have no idea what's transpiring on the track, how much work goes into these horses getting to the races, how much oversight there is. So you have to try and explain that to them in a pretty finite amount of time, trying to get the best information that you can. I always say I would rather be last to the party and right than first to the party and wrong. You know this very well. But as we all know, getting information can be difficult, and you're also talking about very, very sensitive topics and a lot of people involved into what can be, in the worst part of things, a really catastrophic, devastating situation. So coming to it from a reporter's perspective, per se, you also have to keep, for me personally, my emotions in check. It's a really, really challenging thing to cover, but you also know that you have a job to do and you have a duty to the public who are watching back home what's transpiring and describe it in the best way that you possibly can. And I'll be honest, there's no perfect way of doing it. Constantly, you're just trying to have as much information as you can, prepare yourself as best as you can, but I'd be lying if I said that I'm completely prepared for any incident that happens on the track. But you do the best that you can in the moment, and you try and get the public to understand as best as they can without turning them away from a sport that we love so much. And that in and of itself is probably one of the biggest challenges.
Lisa, you're very familiar, obviously, with football as well, and Joy with basketball, other sports. They have things go wrong, all right? A player in football recently got injured. Do we not handle it as well as them? How come we don't hear as much adversity in the other sports as is constantly being told of us in horse racing?
So I think that really goes to the structure of other sports, and I think it's also one of the reasons why HISA over time can make a really big difference, because it's sort of one national unifier that can speak, or at least have processes that are uniform across the country. You know, in the NFL, they have 32 different teams that are partners in the same business. They're working towards the same goals because they basically share all the money, and they share all the revenue. And they've agreed together on what you do in every scenario. The difficulty, I think, with horse racing has been kind of the patchwork nature of our regulatory system. And it's been the fact that we're just many different fiefdoms that have not really come together yet as one industry acting together. And, you know, while that's not entirely HISA's role, certainly not from a PR standpoint, we are trying to do what we can to sort of facilitate that, because there's nobody else in that vacuum, really. And because having, you know, national uniform regulations give us a chance to create or at least lead on those policies. And I think that that's something that is going to be really important for the sport going forward, is finding a way to speak in one voice.
Can you add to that, Joy?
Yeah, I was just going to piggyback off of that. When you think about, the NBA has, 30 teams? They have a PR staff of a minimum of 3 at each team. The league has nothing short of an army. I mean, they have an army of people that just do sports PR and an army of people that do corporate PR. And they're all marching with the same beat, the same drum, the same story. It's the patchwork nature of the sports, patchwork nature of the regulations that each of us have to abide by, especially when we talk about outside of safety. If we could get together and do it all together, it would be much easier, right?
This is kind of something that we talked about in the previous meeting, that we all kind of talked together about the PR problem and social media, clickbait, how we're in a brand new day and age, Shannon talked about it here, brand new day and age where people read headlines and that's it. They don't read the end of the story. People are trying to get clickbait. You are giving a voice to a lot of people that maybe don't have all the information. Most of the time don't have the right information. So how, as an industry, do we counteract that? And I think that is one of our biggest challenges. Safety will always be number one. Even if we're in a really great time where injuries are down, it should always be number one. Number two is probably our PR problem. But without a central body of PR, it's really hard to counteract that and to get this information that we have in this room, that everybody in the industry has, out to the general public, to get them to understand. And that is still something I think that should be number one in trying, or number two behind safety, trying to figure out, because if people don't come to the track, or they don't have a real idea of what we're doing to make this sport better, then we're losing.
Counsel, what's your challenge, I should say, biggest challenge for you working at the racetrack as a female, as a regulatory vet up there at Golden Gate?
I think it's similar to what we've all been saying, just the public perception. One of our biggest issues right now is our social license to operate. And do people agree with it? And really, to keep the sport going, we need people to want to be involved in the sport. We need young people to want to work or invest in buying horses. So I think that's a big challenge right now. And I do think we need to work on our PR, and have more personal stories. Britney, you brought up Cody's Wish a hero that everyone can rally around. Stories like that we need.
How do we invigorate this interest? How do we get these younger kids to relate to this sport and get involved? Where does this need to start?
I think social media, we need to be more active in bringing these personal stories to the general public. You know, when I'm walking down a show row in the morning and I hear a grown man singing in a baby voice while he's brushing his horse's mane, we need stories like that.
Right, absolutely. Brittany, how do you target that audience?
Okay, aside from, it's got to be fun, right? If you're
Right.
talking about a younger group, it has to be fun.
Yeah.
It has to be exciting. Look at what baseball's done. I've loved baseball my whole life, but I might be rare. A lot of young people have not gotten into baseball because they've said it's too slow of a sport. What did they do? And it took a lot of, I think probably those that know the sports world, it took a lot of pain trying to change these rules, but it's a faster game. It's more enjoyable, and I think they've probably garnered more people. I'm not saying necessarily we need to speed up our sport per se. I'm just saying from a fun standpoint, you have to be attracted to something. And I also believe, we talk about sports wagering. It's today Thursday, sports wagering online in Kentucky just went legal. So if you can get all of these people that love other sports and they can wager on it, to know that you've been able to wager on horse racing for decades, that might open up the new sport to a whole new group of people. And you know, I can speak just from the standpoint of FanDuel and what they're trying to do here. There's a whole new approach to how the morning show's going. They're trying to speak to the sports better, make this industry a little bit more approachable, because we all know reading the form can be very difficult, understandable, but also fun at the same time. There is a massive group of people that love wagering, love sports, and don't really know much about horse racing yet.
Well, I mean, I have 2 teenagers, and you know their attention span is about as long as a horse race. So what I would say is, like, we have the perfect product. Like in under 2 minutes, you got the whole thing. You know, start to finish. So I think that, you know, obviously this isn't a Heisman thing, but I think that there's a way to package that. If we all put our minds together, if the industry comes together in a way that really is sort of targeting that younger demographic.
I think about this too. We talk about it as a PR problem, but I think we do a really good job in the reactive PR, right? In crisis management PR. I think that the part of the PR problem is the awareness. And I think there's things that we could do outside of the PR group to bring more awareness to our sport. Are we recruiting at the same places at the same time? Are we going to different schools? Are we only going to the schools that have equine programs? Well, if I need a marketing person, I don't not necessarily need somebody to, I need someone that's a great marketer. Are we opening ourselves up to audiences that might not be, that horse racing isn't on the forefront of their mind, but we run a huge business. I don't know that the controller needs to have grown up on the backside. I need a good accountant to do that. And as we're recruiting, we could be, there are other departments that we could be gumming and bringing people to our sport just by saying, hey, come from work for us. We have a really business. We generate, what is it, $37 billion for the economy every year? That's a story that we should be telling. We should be out speaking to it. There are people that might be interested in that.
And Joy, in Major League Basketball, the players, they monetize themselves, right?
Absolutely.
Would like having, I don't know, say Juan Hernandez sponsored by Nike, you know, would that bring more attention to this sport if we did that?
Juan would love it.
You get some free Nikes.
Yeah, great for Juan.
Absolutely. They, in the majors, they have what they call a group licensing agreement. And so they work together, and depending on which sport you are, if it's 3 or 5, and the league or the union that represents the players can go out and monetize the group. Now, each person can monetize themselves as well, but as a group, they're out selling posters and
that's like the big difference, like having come from the NFL,
Right.
the lack of, it sort of all goes back to the lack of one entity representing groups, you know, because the players' unions, they actually play a really, you know, important role in terms of there's one entity, you know, and there's one league, and they can agree on all of these arrangements together that are for the benefit of the sport. You know, one of the things I realized when I started this job is when I was at the NFL, I was a labor lawyer actually. And so I negotiated with the union a lot. And I was like, oh my God, I have like 17 unions. You know what I mean? It's like you've got to negotiate with so many different stakeholder groups to get something done. And I think the lack of a commissioner's office, the lack of the centralization is why we don't have so many proactive stories. We all know how to react, but we don't have anybody that wakes up in the morning thinking, how can I put a good light on horse racing generally today? And I think that's something we really need to figure out how to solve.
Getting ahead of it rather than constantly being on our back foot.
Right. And how can we also, you know, enhance the race day experience? Shannon talked a little bit about, you know, the developments that are going on at Belmont Park, etc. How can we enhance race day experience? Joy.
Well, we're building a new building.
That'll do it.
But there are things like the break in between races, right? There's 20 minutes. That's time, if you know how to handicap, I guess that people are sitting there handicapping. But most people are just hanging out on their phones, on their own social media. They're on Instagram. Are there ways to bring that time, like when you go to a basketball game, you can see what people are posting on the big screen in the middle. Things like that just make to make it interactive with the people who are at the actual track might make things a little bit more interesting for them.
Right. Casille, would you agree?
Definitely. I have conversations like this a lot with people I work with. At that 20 minutes in between, people get bored. And so what can you do? And I think it's about entertaining them and also doing things to break down the barrier, that intimidation factor where you don't really know how to gamble or you don't know what to do. Keeneland does a good job with that, where they have people that walk around and introduce you to gambling and tell you, you know, this is how you pick horses, this is where you start. So something that really brings the public in if they don't know.
We need to bring betting into the classrooms, right? Elementary kids will learn how to wager.
It's a good way to learn math.
Definitely not condoning underage wagering, but yes, you could really learn a lot. You can learn a lot in terms of math
inspire
skills,
a lot
right?
of kids to figure out their math. Yeah.
We're getting close to our time for Q&A, but I do want to ask each of you what your perspective is. The next 5 years, where do you see horse racing, Casille?
I think that we are definitely going to start having more of a public presence than we have just because of all the media that surrounds horse racing. And I really hope moving forward we're bringing more of a positive media experience with that.
Britney?
It's tough, right? Because we are at a precipice, we are at a tipping point, and it's going to take unity, and I don't just mean unified rules, I mean unity from all jurisdictions working together to make sure we don't tip the wrong way. And I'm hopeful that we can do that. Joy, you were talking about earlier, different jurisdictions speaking with each other and working with each other. I do feel like I've seen that a lot more as of late than we have in previous years or decades, but I feel like for us to tip the right direction, we have to have less of a me first, me only, I mentality. We're all in this together. I kind of feel like the horse racing industry is a bit of a beating heart, and the only way that it continues to beat strongly is if all entities are surviving and thriving. And say one falls, I think they all fall. So we all need to be in it together. So my hope is that we continue to work together and create more of this unified mentality. I know everybody's got a bottom line. I know we all got to make money, but at the end of the day, there will be no sport if we don't all work together.
Well put. Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I would piggyback on what Britney said. I mean, I do think that sometimes you have to reach somewhat of a breaking point or a low point to really see monumental change. And from where I sit, because I interact with a lot of different organizations, a lot of different stakeholder groups, I do see that people are seeing it as an all-hands-on-deck moment. There's a couple of outliers, you know, one big horseman's group that I hope will ultimately shift their perspective, but generally speaking, everybody else has really been like, okay, you know, we're ready to really do whatever it takes, because we all rise or fall together, right? And if there is no industry, there's no sales, there's so many things that obviously will suffer, and so I believe that we are going to be building back better and stronger.
You have to be very proud of what you've done so far.
No, thank you.
And Joy.
It's so hard to go last on this one. Ditto. But no, I'm just saying, Just to piggyback, if you look at where we are now and probably compared it to 2 years ago, and the attitudes of people, like even before, probably a week before HISA went into effect to now, and people's attitudes are like, okay, we can do this. Like, we're working through this. We're working through how the rules get implemented. We're seeing that it's not an inflexible wall we're up against. We can all work together and build something great and make sure that everybody knows that we're building something great as well.
All right, well, let's give them a round of applause. These are barrier-breaking women who are actively making racing better. Thank you all very, very much. Now we've got some time for a Q&A. I do want to again quickly remind you about our presentation right afterwards, so please stay seated for that. You had a question right here. Yes, ready. Ready.
Castle, yes.
Counsel and for Lisa. Okay. So our drug level is like at 0, whatever. Okay, first off, you know, I've spent my life with these horses and took a break for a while, and I came back. So in the summer times at Del Mar, I'm working with the horses. And so I understand and I hear the horseman's point of view on a lot of things. And one of the things that I saw today coming back to Santa Anita was that John Sheriff had to change all his bedding to shavings. And the reason he did that was because all summer long at Del Mar, we found scopolamine weeds in the straw. And in fear of getting a positive scopolamine test, he changed to shavings. Shavings today are dirty, dusty, and they are not a good environment for those horses to live in, and not a good environment for the grooms to be living in all day long. And so I feel, they feel, horsemen feel, that the drug policy is way too strict and not common sense enough for what the reality is of what has happened. And take it further.
Yeah, sorry.
I was diagnosed with eczema a couple summers ago, you know, and I went to my doctor and she prescribed betamethasone. So I know Medina Spirit's story. I don't want to use betamethasone on my hands and put my hands in a horse's mouth putting a lip chain on him. So I, being who I am, I go to a natural medicine doctor, find out why I had eczema, was able to make it go away, stopping drinking milk, okay? I was allergic to the protein in milk. So now I do oat milk in my lattes. But, you know, the eczema went away. I don't need to use betamethasone. I don't have to worry about John having a positive, you know? And it's things like that that make HISA such a nightmare for horsemen.
If I can maybe, I think, first of all, I'm really glad you brought up those questions, because I think it's really important that there's not misinformation out there, and I think there is a lot of misinformation. So HISA has an atypical findings policy. We have 27 substances on it that if they're detected in a horse's sample, it goes through an entirely different process, okay? Scopolamine is one of them. What happens is that we essentially notify the trainer, you have an atypical finding, let us know what's your bedding manufacturers, what, et cetera, what's basically happening in your barn. Nobody knows about it because we don't make it public. Because if it's an atypical finding, we don't make it public unless we actually move it on to an actual charge. We've had about 12 scopolamines already since we started that nobody knows about that were dismissed because they're contamination. So we have an entire process that addresses that. We've had about, if you consider all the 27 substances, about 40 cases of atypical findings that are contaminants that never become charges because we know how to deal with it. Now we still have to have them on our, in our program, because if you're using it intentionally, it needs to be a violation. But we have that whole process set up to determine whether or not it's contamination or intentional. The other thing is there's a ton of misinformation out there about what actually would yield a positive. If you put a ton of betamethasone on your hand and you shove it in a horse's mouth, yeah, they'll probably test positive, but you don't need to do that, right? There are other ways to get around it. And in accidental, like patting the horse, that's not going to rise to the level of a positive test. It's not zero. It's not. We don't go down to limits of detection on every substance, and never for controlled medications, which is what betamethasone is. So, what's struggling, sort of frustrating to me sometimes is that people may ask these kinds of questions and make statements that are really honestly not true. And if they looked at the rules and looked at the programs we have in place, they would realize that we're doing our very best, and I think successfully, to balance between those threats of contamination and protecting the sport. And you can't find a single positive test for scopolamine because we got rid of them all.
Lisa, before we go to the next question,
Sure.
I want to follow up on that. Where would the general public find information like that?
On our website. And
There you go.
we can't, we give out, we do all kinds. First of all, there's an app. If you actually search on either your Apple or iOS, they call it, whatever. I use Apple, so I don't know the other system. But and you put in HIWU, there's a full app. You can enter any substance into that app. It'll tell you whether it's in controlled medication, so allowed between races but not on race day, and those are never at zero limits of detection, or a banned substance, which should never be in a horse's system. And it'll also tell you if it's a specified substance. And if it's specified, it's under that atypical findings policy, which means that we will never notify you that you have a positive until we go through the due diligence to make sure. Like, for example, in Ohio recently, there was a huge betting issue with glycine, I think. We had a ton of cases. Well, we figured it out and we dismissed them all. So there is a process in place for that, and that never existed under the state system. Under the state system, in most jurisdictions, if you had a positive, even if it was a contaminant, you had no way to get around it. The sanctions might have been less, but you still had no way to avoid a positive. We get rid of those if they're genuinely contamination.
Joy, did you want to, Casille, add to that?
I just think, obviously, there's the contaminants
Right.
that Lisa's
Environmental,
touched
yeah.
on. But also, at the end of the day, these are professional athletes, and we cannot have anything in their system that masks pain or that enhances performance, because we have to protect the rider, the horse, and the wagering public. So things like betamethasone, yes, maybe it can sometimes be a contaminant. I think, like Lisa said, it would be quite difficult. But at the end of the day, that is a masking agent that can cause a horse to break down. And so we have to be strict on those policies. So at the end of the day, I think, the strictness is necessary.
Right.
Following up on that, and first of all, Lisa, thank you for taking on this incredibly challenging work.
Thank you.
But I was wondering if you had any comments about this new proposal by the representative in Louisiana for this.
You mean the racehorse?
Could you repeat the
Safety Act?
question?
Yes.
Sorry.
So I can actually. She was asking me whether or not I had any comments on a reaction to a bill that was introduced in Congress a few days ago by a representative in Louisiana to essentially repeal HIWU and replace it with the Racehorse Safety Act, I think it's called. It's an HDPA initiative. Listen, the truth is that I'll go back to the things that sort of I always say. This is an all hands on deck moment. We need to work together. As an organization, we've reached out numerous times to the HDPA to try to have conversations, to try to resolve our issues. My thing is, we can talk all day about whether rules are right or wrong, and we are very open to adjusting rules when they're not right. But we have to all be in the same place and on the same team when it comes to having one unified set of rules under one organization. And this act, which doesn't have, I think it only has one sponsor in Congress, is just basically going back to the old state system. It's a voluntary compact, which never worked because some states were in and some states weren't, so it really had no teeth. And is back to a patchwork set of different sets of rules. So I think history has shown that doesn't work. You know what I mean? So I would be so much happier if they put that effort into telling us what we're not doing right so we can adjust and be stronger together going forward.
So first, as a middle school teacher, no betting in schools.
Bad idea.
Especially as a middle school teacher who works up the street from Del Mar. So no betting in the schools. We already have enough to teach them in those 2 years we only have them. But on that same note, is getting that group of that age group involved in everything. You guys were touching on the 20 minutes between races, and we're also struggling finding where can we have these positive stories. Well, we have 20 minutes between each race. Like, tell the stories, not just of Cody's, which is fantastic. It's one of my favorite things. When that comes on NBC, I bring, like, the kids watch, and we're all emotional about it, right?
Tears.
But all of our horses have a story. All of our trainers have a story. All of our grooms have a story, right? Like, use that 20 minutes to, like, feature a trainer, feature a horse that maybe people haven't heard of yet. Like, I know at Del Mar this summer, we had two amazing fillies that ran during the summer. We had Anisette, who won 2 grade 1s, which was amazing. And then we had Tamara. Well, the Toba hosted like an ownership seminar one day at Del Mar on a Friday before the season started. And we got to tour Dick Mandela's barn. And Go Rocket Ride had just come back from his victory, and it was fantastic. But next to him was a little filly out of Beholder, and didn't have a name yet on the stall. So my husband goes and watches he's at the racetrack without me. And he's like, oh my gosh, I saw this like filly out of Beholder run today. Her name is Tamara. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's her name. Like, I saw that horse. Like, I know, like, he was so high on her and so excited about her. But like, those are the stories we could be telling between the 20 minutes. And I think we just have opportunity, like, kind of harnessing and capturing like this generation's like social media obsession, Instagram obsession, all that, at each of the tracks to create opportunities, create those Instagram moments, but like do that for the kids. Like, bring ponies and little jockey outfits, and like have them sit on the pony and take a picture on the jockey with like as they're pretending to be a jockey. Something like just like really simple, like community relation type things where I think we can begin that positive PR. It doesn't have to be like a nationwide everybody. Like, that's amazing. We want to get there, obviously, but I feel like we have this opportunity at each of the major tracks at least to engage that generation and bring families in. I think one of my favorite moments of the summer was Donuts at Del Mar. It was like one Sunday morning, they had donuts. I think Michelle Yu was hosting and kind of interviewing the jockeys and kind of talking and taking questions, and like my kids loved it. They're like, when are we doing this again? Like, when can we come back and watch workouts and have donuts? But those are the kinds of things I think that's where we can start, very like grassroots fundamental kind of thing to like improve the positive PR of our industry and our sport.
I feel like Joy wants to add.
I was just going to agree. This summer, Dave O'Rourke was bringing children into the winner's circle all summer long. As the lawyer, I'm like, oh God, here he is again with 30 kids in the winner's circle and a horse. When I would sit back and watch him, and to me it was one of those things. I'm like, this is what he can control. Let him bring Dave's kids. He's going, and he would look like a Pied Piper. It'd be like 40 kids following him into the winner's circle. And I kept thinking, I'm like, David is going to build this sport one fan at a time, one race at a time, bringing these kids into the winner's circle. And then, by the end of the summer, some people the kids knew how to do it, like where to stand to be in his eye to say, come on in. But yes, it is those little grassroots moments that do build fans.
It's using social media to your advantage. It's the opposite. Yes, social media has a lot of negatives, right? But in terms of spreading the word, it is the easiest way to do it. I have no idea how to use TikTok, and I probably should, but that's the new thing, right? And if you get these moments out there, and if it gets any sort of traction, then even if you're not following a horse racing related entity, you're gonna see it. It'll come up in your Explore page. It'll come up next in your story, yes, but you have to can we get Taylor Swift to come out here? I mean, she's obviously had a massive, right? I mean, you've got Swifties watching football now who never cared before. No, that would be a difficult one. But I do think that a lot of racetracks have begun to do that. We're already doing it. It's just, you almost have to get a little lucky. What is going to really stick with people? I know here at Santa Anita, they get the Compton Cowboys out in the middle, getting a whole new group of people to come out here, a lot of different events. They've got the ponies, so it's there. I just feel like we almost have to get a little bit lucky for that viral moment, that positive viral moment, to get people back out here, but it's tracking that direction.
I took my kids to the Derby for the first time 2 years ago. and they had that rapper. They were more excited about the fact
Yes,
that they were meeting the rapper
Jack,
than when we had a runner in the Derby.
Yeah, what's his name again? Jack. Yeah, it's the same thing.
Jack Hollow.
Yes,
Yes.
Jack Hollow. Yeah.
I was like, who?
He's from Louisville.
Yeah.
Who knew?
We have a question. Over
One more question.
We've got
Yes.
one waiting
Well,
over.
I hate to say this now because it kind of goes to the same point with Joy's making, what you were making. Like when we start comparing this industry to other sports, right? We can't discount the fact that football and baseball and basketball have youth sports. And the reason why they're successful and they're going to sustain themselves is because of the youth organization. And people are following these players when they're children.
Yeah.
And as an industry, as you guys are pointing out, we don't, and Joy and I work together, so we used to laugh about, Dave's kids, but we don't do the same thing for youths in this industry. I don't have an answer for that, but from a PR perspective, I mean, are there things that we can do to see how are youth getting involved in horse racing at a younger age and start promoting that? And it can't just be just NYRA or just Del Mar, just that it has to be a global thing that the industry as a whole is thinking about doing if they want to sustain this industry.
Global
Right.
Kids Day.
Yeah, no, again, going back
Take
to the
them to the
schools,
backside,
we'll leave
yeah.
out the gambling part, but, teach them, about horse racing.
Could we
Yeah.
squeeze in one more question?
Yes.
Stage left, right over here.
Yes,
Thank you.
Stephanie.
Hello,
Hi.
wonderful panel. I look forward to meeting those of you that I don't already know. My name is Caitlin. I run GSS, the marketing agency. So I've been in the business for about 10 years, and I wanted to start out with an observation that I've had the past 8-9 months, and that kind of leads into how HISA, I know you were at FEI, and I'm a hunter jumper. I have a 6-year-old thoroughbred who is now doing the national derbies.
Wow.
So I'm familiar with the breeding, and I've worked on breeding farms, and I've also worked in social media. I currently work in social media. So the thing is, I feel like we always have the conversations about the drugs, the track. At what point do we have a conversation about the horses being bred themselves? Because my horse, he is a Book 2 Keeneland September horse, Claiborne bred, and I work in the breeding industry. I have a lot of friends in the breeding industry. I'm just saying he's lame every other week because of his conformation, his feet angles, and just general, and he was also passed by new vocations as not having any physical capabilities. But this horse, he ran one race, he could not last on the racetrack. And it's very, very common, as far as social media goes, one bad accident at NYRA or one bad accident at Breeders' Cup can undo an entire 10 days of having 8 people on the ground pumping out all of that positive content. So how does HISA plan to address, because I feel like there is a larger issue at play.
Sure.
If these horses were sounder, then people, right, it just kind of makes common sense that they would be less likely to try to use drugs to keep them sound. By having a thoroughbred, I know that it's difficult. And so the track surfaces, we're the most sophisticated country in the world, one of them. I don't think, the tracks that are being laser leveled and looked at so closely are necessarily the cause of all of the issues or the drugs.
So a couple weeks ago, we released the findings of our investigation into the fatalities at Churchill Downs. And what we said in that report was, while there was no one singular factor that caused, that essentially caused the breakdowns, there are still a multitude of factors that working together put these horses at risk. We need to look at each of them. And in our strategic response, one of the areas we identified was the sales. And HISA's jurisdiction only starts when a horse has its first published work, so when it's basically on its way to the racetrack. That being said, we have opened conversations with all 3 of the major sales companies and are speaking with them about how we can better align our practices. Hopefully that's going to be a really productive initiative. I think it is. I think it sort of goes back to what I was saying earlier. I genuinely see this all hands on deck moment because a conversation that I think would not have been entertained maybe a few years ago is very much entertained now, and there's an understanding that we need to all really work together. So we are pursuing that. And I think that we will see change in that regard. I'm not saying that's the answer. I don't know. I mean, one of the things that Shannon touched on is that HISA is working with AWS and Palantir to really sort of state-of-the-art data analytics companies, and we're looking at all the data we have because we are enabled to collect a lot of data that previously wasn't mandated. And so the data is going to kind of, I think, tell us where we need to look and focus more and go deeper. But that is certainly one of the questions that's very much on the table. And I hear that from a lot of trainers who will say to me, it's not the same horse as 30 years ago, Then there's some trainers who will say that's garbage. They're the same horses, we're doing this wrong. So everyone has kind of a different theory, but we now have the ability to collect data to kind of help us figure out which are the theories that we need to pursue. But that one is absolutely on the table.
Well, thank you very, very much. Joy, Lisa, Britney, Casille, can we give them a round of applause? These fantastic women. Thank you very, very much. Very, very interesting.
Do want to remind you all, do not leave your seats. Cross your legs if you have to, because we're going to invite a couple of special gets up. Ladies, you're off the hook. Thank you so much. That was brilliant.
Zoe.
That was absolutely brilliant. And we're going to get Jane Goldstein up here, and Alan Bolch, and Amy Zimmerman quickly. Well done, ladies. Thank you. We're going to set the stage, but do not leave. Manual labor, never ending. You gotta wait. No, you can come. You can, come on. Okay, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. If we have the ladies take a seat right here. It is our second annual Jane Goldstein Award. We have this year's recipient, Chelsea Canty, here. We'll get to hear from her in just a minute, but obviously, who won the first? It was Jane Goldstein. Amy, I'm going to let you take the stage for a minute and just tell us all a little bit about Jane and what she meant to you.
I hate you. I was just supposed to hand a plaque over. All right, so yeah, exactly. I'm doing this because I usually end up in her ear. For those of you who weren't here last year, Jane Goldstein was the first female publicity director at any racetrack in the country. It was right here at Santa Anita Park. Jane was truly a pioneer in this sport. A lot of us came up underneath her. A lot of us are in this room are the beneficiary of her excellence and her perseverance. And there is not a finer person to have this award named after than my friend Jane.
All right, well, they truly say a picture paints 1,000 words. It's a modern industry now. How about moving pictures and a whole lot of moving words? This is for you, Chelsea.
They say that you should never meet your heroes because they always disappoint. Well, Charles C. Canty was my hero, and she did not disappoint. I admired her from afar when I was a jockey, and then I had the honor of working with her. She was my role model, my mentor, and more importantly, my friend. Charles C., the sport of horse racing, and women everywhere have been lucky to have you. Thank you.
Charles, you have always been my inspiration. Growing up in North Jersey, watching you on Racing from Belmont on Channel 9, I was enthralled. And at ESPN, you raised the standard for all reporters, regardless of sport. You were then and are now my hero. Congratulations, so richly deserved.
Congratulations, Charles C. We've never met, but I've always thought of you as somebody that's been an incredible role model, a true pioneer. Thank you for paving the way and for all that you do within the industry, being a horse person, and all that you continue to do in the sport and outside of it.
Charlesie, thank you so much. I know many of us in this room would not be here today if it wasn't for you. Obviously, we loved your poise and your presence, and we loved racing across America with you, but we also have to thank you for bridging the gap between the backside and the front side as many of us straddle that today. Thank you so much. You've been a true inspiration.
Charlesie, thank you. Thank you from all of us. Thank you for paving the way, especially for people like me who knew the back of the horse, but not the front of the camera. You brought your horsemanship to the camera, and we thank you for it. Well done.
I don't know Charlesie personally, but she's somebody I've always admired. Charlesie, congratulations, and thank you so much for paving the way for women in this sport.
Charlesie, without you, I would not have chosen a career in horse racing and in television. Seeing you on the horse racing broadcast, listening to your passion and just your voice, the way your enthusiasm for the game would shine through the screen. You're the reason I went to journalism school. You're the reason I went after this job. Thank you for inspiring me to begin a career that I love.
Charlesie, you set the bar so high for all of us following in your footsteps. Take comfort in knowing it's a perpetual climb, but we sure are having fun trying.
A big congratulations on a well-deserved honor. You have been a hero and an inspiration to so many of us in the industry. Congratulations.
Charlesie, I just wanted to wish you a massive congratulations. I can't truly think of anybody more deserving of this award, someone that paved the way, led the way for women like myself in this sport. So thank you and congratulations.
Charlesie, congratulations on winning the Jane Goldstein Leadership Award. You're a pioneer and a groundbreaker in this industry, and we are forever grateful for what you've done for women in the world of horse racing.
Charlesie, you set the gold standard in broadcasting and representing the horse industry. Thank you for being a mentor, and congratulations on this award.
Working as Charlesie's assistant in the ABC days, I learned the importance of professionalism and preparation, respect for every member of the team, and not taking yourself too seriously. I can't think of a more deserving recipient for this, and I congratulate you, my friend, my mentor, my role model.
As we honor Charlesie Canty, the second recipient of the Jane Goldstein Leadership Award, there was an awful lot of paving. I think we could pave the 405 with the road that you paved for us. Charlesie, you're an expert at this. I'm just going to hand this over to you to say a few words, but truly, thank you. Oh, Amy first. Now she wants to speak.
No, actually, Jane is supposed to speak.
Oh, Jane. Jane, please say a few words in honor of Charlesie. Here you go.
Well, first of all, I have to thank Stephanie Hronis and the Horse Racing Women's Summit for the surprising honor of having received the first award, and then this year having the award named for me. But this today is not about me, it's about Charlesie. We've known each other a very long time and have liked each other a very long time. I just wanted to relate one story that I had read about recently about Charlesie, that there was a young girl who wanted to work at the racetrack, and her mother forbade her from going to work at the terrible racetrack. Then one day, her mother saw Charlesie on a racing broadcast, and she changed her mind and let her daughter go to work. That's the sort of inspiration she's been, not just to the people in front of the camera, but to others, and she's a terrific lady.
Thank you, Jane. We talk about pioneer stories. We go back to the covered wagon days, I guess, but here we are. First of all, I'm so glad I'm sitting down. I don't think I could stand right now, my legs. Thank you for all of this. To be given this award named for you, and to be here at Santa Anita Park, somehow it's also very beautiful because you are here. My, my strength is here, Amy. And I just feel like so much of this started for me out of a lot of Santa Anita. Frank Tours, who was here, yes. Frank Tours was one of the ones he was at NYRA and wound up dragging me out of the backstretch and to get involved in broadcasting, which I didn't want to do. And I wound up, fortunately, talking about allies and advocates, what you heard earlier today, and the protection of Frank Wright and Dave Johnson. And without the two of them, I don't know, I probably wouldn't be here because they were so supportive, such mentors. They talked me off a ledge every week because I was so terrified. I said, I can't do this anymore, I'm quitting, I'm not here, not here. And they would talk me back. They showed me the ropes, and somehow 30 years later, I was still at it somehow. But to be presented this award is such a validation for me and my life and career, and everybody in this room, every woman in this room who's held a microphone and done a broadcast, and I see many of you here that I watch and admire so much. I am in awe of what you do today. I mean, and Jane, who put her shoulder to the door and opened the door for all of us to get through. So,
I just want to interject. You mentioned Frank Tours, who dragged you into this. I worked with him at Pimlico. I was on the publicity staff. And he took me out for a drink one evening, and he told me just to forget about it. I would never make it in this business.
well, how much he knew, and he drugged me in, yeah, so glad he got that out of his system with you. Oh my God, that's a story. Wow. So I thank God he did. All of us thank you for all of that. I mean, there's no way to express our appreciation and how grateful I am for this award. And I will take one more piece of my beloved late Frank Wright's advice. And he always said, think about what you're going to say and then cut it in half. So I'm not going to drag this on, but I do want to let each and every one of you all know this Women's Summit. I am so in awe of what's happened here, what you have done. It's been barely over a year, right? And the energy, I mean, I take a line from the Hamilton play. Look around, look around. Look what you've got going on here. And I don't want to be negative, but I must say that the longer I have been on the other side of the stable gate, the more I see and hear of the perception that racing is having to battle right now. So you've got your work cut out for you. You truly do. And, but the thing of it is, we're all here because of the love of the horse and the love of racing. So please carry on and keep doing this fabulous job that you're doing. And I thank you all from the bottom of my heart.
Thank you so much. Amy Zimmerman, Santa Anita Vice President, Chelsea Canty, and of course Jane Goldstein, who was the very first woman back in 1976 to run a publicity department. She'd only been here a year, and she took over, and she stayed here until her retirement in 1998. Is that when you retired?
I retired in 1998, yes.
We're glad to have you here. Do you have a piece of advice you could give to anyone out here looking to break into the industry?
It took me by surprise. You have to love it. If you have the love for it, then just go after it.
You heard it here. If you got to love it, just go for it. Okay, ladies, I think we're going to have a picture presentation. Let's have another round of applause for our three magnificent ladies here. And in it, so we'll all taken the picture. You can all go eat. Chandelier room.